Shock Monkey Radio is entertainment for adults, by adults, and the views and opinions expressed here do not reflect upon the sponsors or FXBG Public Radio. For additional information, please refer to the United States Bill of Rights. Stand warned. Tweaking on the mic, are you? Tweak. Oh, I'm dumb. Shock Monkey Radio is entertainment for adults, by adults. That's my fault. Sorry. I guess the audio's working? Okay. I was wondering. Anyway, let's do the cold open, shall we? You ready to begin the show? Go. I found a live spider in my air filter. I have an air filter in my office, and I cleaned it out this weekend, and I found a live spider. I looked inside, I was like, ah. And he was like all panicked and running around all the dead skin cells and so forth. He looked like he didn't know what was going on. He's like, ah, just like running around, and finally I pulled him up like, ha ha, finally, Parker, I have you right where I want you. Which I'm sure like every member of the Sinister Six does that when they catch a spider in their air filter, right? Then he kind of lurched towards me, and I was like, ah! And so I ran out the back door and threw it against the ground, the filter against the ground. So, because, I don't want to kill a spider if I don't have to. But I was wondering, like, what kind of experience did that live spider have? Like, he's coming crawling near the, in my office, he's crawling near the air filter. He's like, ooh, the air is really nice and fresh here. Ooh, this thing is vibrating. I'm going to climb on it. Ooh, look, there's little tiny holes in there. I bet you I could go and find out. You get sucked in there. He's in this dark, with inside of a hurricane. He's just spazzing out. What's going on? How long has he been in there? Because I leave that thing on all the time. And I only clean it once a week. So how long has he been in there? What kind of experience does that spider have? Does he go back to his spider family? It's like you wouldn't believe. He wouldn't believe what I've seen. The things I've seen in that house. Be careful going into that house, young one. No, I know most likely you're going to be eaten by one, either your mother or me, but don't go in that house. Welcome to Shock Monkey Radio. I am your host, the Madman. I want to remind you that I have a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio. Become a patron today. I would very much appreciate it. Or you can send me money on Cash App. Use the hashtag shockmonkeyradio, all one word. I'd appreciate that. We already got people in the chat. Shock, Monkey, and Radio. Very clever. Some people love the emojis, I tell you. Sorry, I'm not home right now. You remember like Gwen Stefani, like walking into spider webs? Man, that was peak Gwen Stefani, right? It was all downhill from there. Anyway. And there's this other spider that's been hanging out near my back door. I'll step outside for a smoke. And he's been hanging out by my back door. Pretty fat little bastard, too. And he's eating high on the hog. But I came and looked at him one time, and he like panicked and scurried to the edge of the web. He's like, oh, this thing's huge. And then I look up, and I notice that there's this like tension, one single tension gossamer strand right above my head. So I just go, plunk. And the whole spider web goes off into the wind. And I went out the next day, and it was back. The same web was back. And so now it's like, for like 3 days now, I've been like, I'll pull out my knife and I'll cut the strands until this web goes away, until this spider learns that maybe I should go somewhere else. Because, if I see you, then I'm aware of you, and then I have to do something about it. If this, like, there's probably another spider like right on the other side of the door that I'm never near, and I never bother him because I haven't seen him. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's like I'll try to save the spider that's in the air filter. I'll take him outside, but I'll mess with the ones outside. Don't build your house on my property. You freeloaders. You're not paying any rent here. So, it's just the fact of the matter that, spiders have scared me. They still kind of scare me. And I've made a little bit of peace with them. I know that they, without spiders in this world, there would be a lot more irritating insects that would be bothering all of us. So I can respect a spider, but I'll never make peace with horses. Never. There's still no use for them. Cars have been invented. All right. It's hot. Remember, I think it was last week we were talking about, you can imagine what it'd be like in a liberal's brain. And I spent a little more time thinking about that this past week. And I was thinking about those people who are like the pronoun people. You know what I mean? They sit there in bed, lay at bed at night, and they're like, you know what I'm going to do? I've made up my mind. I'm going to go by Zer. That's what I like. I'm going to go to school tomorrow, usually school-age kids. I'm going to go to school tomorrow and tell everybody to start using Zer pronouns for me. And I'll make sure that they do that. And if they don't do it, I'll remind them politely. I'll politely remind them, no, I'm not a her, I'm a Zer. Please use the correct pronouns. And if they keep doing it, I'll just go tell the teacher. I'll tell the principal. You know, it's like, so you sit there laying there in bed at night and you're thinking about you, thinking about what you want to be. And it's not even in a what you want to be kind of like, I want to grow up and be an astronaut kind of way. It's what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of message do I want to send out to the people about the people I like to have sex with? I mean, it's so like self-involved and narcissistic thinking that it hurts me to not think about something external. You know, I sit there and start thinking about myself. The only result is depression. Sorry. That's how depression works. You know, stinking thinking, you know. So and you start thinking about yourself all the time. And it's like, and then all of a sudden you're coming home from school. It's like, I can't believe Brian misgendered me. You know, and that's a source of your pain because it's still yourself. You know, it's still like the pain of yourself. It's still centered around you. How Last time I even thought about crying was when Norm Macdonald died. All right. It's because it's external to me. And he's like a hero of mine. Hero of many people's, actually. So things that upset me are external. I think about like all the children being aborted, the children being killed. That upsets me. That's external to me. That's the kind of thing that depresses me these days. It's not the old depression that I used to have, which is all like, oh, I'm ugly, I'm never going to get married, I'm never going to be happy, blah, 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 me. Because that kind of stuff is just self-involved and boring. Sorry, you're boring. I'm boring. You know? But at least I talk about stuff other than myself. You know what I mean? Most of these people is like all they talk about is themselves, the kind of people they want to have sex with, and the people they have had sex with. It's like talking to somebody with tattoos. It's like you talking to somebody with tattoos. It's like, and I have my stance. It's like I think tattoos are stupid. And it was like, well, this tattoo, this means something to me. And me and my mom got one together. And it's like, exactly. I don't care. Having tattoos doesn't make you interesting. Changing your pronouns doesn't make you interesting. If anything, it proves how boring you are. They're just a bunch of self-involved people begging for attention, says the YouTuber with 215 subscribers. What achievement! Anyway, the good news is I got to hang out with the Sinister Six. I got to hang with one of the Sinister Six, Shocker. His name's, I had to write it down because I screwed up last week and I messed up the name. So I wrote it down just to make sure. It's Herman, right? Herman Schultz, the Shocker. I'm not going to do the hand gesture because he hates that. He really hates the Shocker hand. Do you know what I'm talking about? And here's how I found this out. We were driving to the bar. He was driving. And we were at a red light. And the car in front of us had one of those Shocker stickers on the back window. And he's just fuming. He was talking for a sec. And then as soon as we pulled up behind this car, he's just fuming. And he's watching the pattern of the lights. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, just watching. And then he puts the car in park, right? And he grabs one of his shot gauntlets, puts it on, right? This is so funny. As soon as the light in front of us turns green, he jumps out of the car, runs up to the back windshield where that Shocker sticker was, and just shocks the windshield. The back windshield just shatters. The two girls that are in the front of the car are like, oh my God, what happened? He runs, jumps back into our car, pulls around her, and goes through the light. Anyway, second funniest guy of the Sinister Six that I've met. He is awesome, but, you know, don't, with the hand gesture, he really doesn't like that. He said some very interesting things. I actually, like, wrote them down. I brought a notebook this time, so, because I was screwing up quotes. Apparently some people were a little upset with some of the things I've said on the show, but, c'est la vie, sorry. You know, you're a villain. You should have thicker skin. And Herman was like, he doesn't really like that name. He prefers, just call him Shocker. He said, revenge is like an afterthought when it comes to actually making money as a villain. And I was like, you almost seem sensible. You seem like the smartest one of the Sinister Six, because you're like, yeah, we want to get Spider-Man and Spider-People and symbiotes and all that. And yeah, we want to get them, but at what cost? You know, we can make money while we're doing that. You know, if Spider-Man shows up, then we can take care of our revenge then. You know, but if we're robbing a bank, let's rob a bank. You know, I can't argue with his logic. You know, he had really good points in that regard. And he said he watched the show last week, and he was laughing at what I was saying about Spider-Gwen, and so he brought up Spider-Girl. He's like, you know, he was Mysterio was right about like us beating up girls, because there's other like teenage Spider Girls, like Mayday Parker, you know, and he's like you can bring it up, the Spider Girl, and he's like, yeah, it's like Peter Parker's daughter. And he's like, it's like the whole genetic line, the Parker genetic line, needs to be taken out. All because of one radioactive spider, you know? Like throughout all the universes and stuff like that. Like if that one radioactive spider hadn't bit Peter Parker, no Sinister Six, no spider freaks running around, little girls that we got to beat up. I mean, you can say what you want about a guy named Herman Schultz who wants to ethnically cleanse spider people from the earth, but I mean, it's not like he's Nick Fuentes. He was pretty funny, you know. He's a bit of a jokester, you know, but he has a point. It's like one little radioactive spider, and it's a whole different reality. Nom, 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 nom. Anyway, I bet they're going to hate that. They've been critiquing me, you know. It's like, I don't know, I don't like what you said on it. It's like, okay. It's like, there's the thing at the beginning, the First Amendment thing I mentioned. Anyway, enough being crude to a teenage Spider Girl. Let's do a quick movie review and then a longer movie review. Since I did Robocop 2 last week, I figured it would be fitting to do Robocop 1 in 1987. Ooh, stop that, Red. I'm in the middle of a show. You got to move that, man. That's going to be distracting. Getting all excited. Stop that. And so I watched Robocop 1, and it's always fun trying to like pick one picture for a show, for a talk about a movie. And so I figured this is the best one. Because I'm not going to go over the plot of the original Robocop. Hopefully you've seen it. Hopefully you know how excellent it is as a movie. Even though I was criticizing the effects in the 1990 Robocop 2. But in comparison to 87 Robocop, they are like works of art in comparison. And so that kind of has a bearing on the star rating when it comes to this movie. But by and large, you know, by far, the greatest thing about Robocop, the first movie, are the villains. Every single good action movie, especially, even if it's sci-fi action, you know, needs good villains. And Clarence Boddicker, played by everyone's favorite 70s show dad, forget his name, but he's an excellent villain, a really excellent villain. Plus he has his crew, you know, and they are excellent villains as well. I like Joe. He's the black guy. I think his name is Joe. He's the black guy. He's the guy that caught Lewis napping. Mind if I zip this up? And Lewis takes her eyes off because she's like, yeah, maybe I'll burn the coal. She looks down, and he gets the drop on her and knocks her out, and then Murphy gets killed. You know what I'm saying? So, good villain, even though he dies first. The black guy dies first. And he got it like the second easiest of all of them, even though he died first. He was just shot. All right? He was a good villain. Also, there's Emil. He's the guy that's like, was filling up the motorcycle. He's like, what are you, a college boy? I really get shot, that guy. And one of the scenes with Emil that I like the most is he's sitting there like watching TV outside of a TV store, drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels. And he's just watching the TV. There's no volume. But there's a riot going on down the street. And so like alarms start going off. People are screaming, glasses breaking, and finally gets frustrated, comes up and breaks the window of the TV store and turns up the volume so he can finally hear it. I'd buy that for $1, And I like that character, and I think he got it the worst, as villain. And that's what's great about the villains in this movie is that they get sometimes a couple of them are really satisfying deaths. And poor Emil, he got coated in chemicals, and just his skin started dripping off him. Help me! Get away from me! And then his boss runs over him in a car, putting him out of his misery. I guess that's I don't know, job perk, I suppose, working for sociopaths, And Clarence, of course, he catches the one, the computer jack to the jugular, stuff that's censored on the, the free to watch stuff like that. Even the rape scene where Robocop saves that woman from rape, that's edited out of some movies. And why? Anyway. Very satisfying deaths. And then you got like the corporate guys. What was there's Dick Jones, obviously. I had to pull this up for a reason. And what was his name? Clarence Dick Jones. Bob Morton. Now, Bob Morton wasn't exactly a villain. He was just a greedy 80s corporate asshole, that you found, all over the place. He just wanted to be successful so he can do cocaine and bang hookers. But he crossed Dick Jones, and Dick Jones sends Clarence Boddicker to blow him up. Did he deserve that? I don't know. Bob Morton may not have been a very good person, but he crossed a more evil person, like Dick Jones. And Dick Jones is awful, even with his long arms when he fell at the end. Sorry for all the spoilers. But a satisfying death for a villain is incredibly cathartic when you watch a movie, especially one like Robocop. All right, and having excellent villains, like the conversation between Clarence Boddicker and Dick Jones, where he's like, you spilled your guts to that Robocop, and he goes, look at my face, Dick. He was trying to kill me. It's very genuine, in terms of how evil people would talk to each other and like how they'd make deals. Even when Clarence Boddicker's making the deal with that Italian guy, and he calls him a racial slur, and he goes, blow this cocksucker's head off right now. It's so good stuff. Good villains. Robocop, you have to have seen it. And if you haven't, what's wrong with you? That's 10 of 13 stars, Robocop. Your move, creep. Peter Weller. Now I'm wondering if I should watch the newer ones. I don't know. All right, I want to talk about this movie called Zero Charisma. It's a 2013 movie, and it's for a limited audience in many ways. You kind of have to understand the role-playing game culture. You have to understand like the kinds of personalities that these kind of games attract, and the kinds of problems you may encounter when you're in a group of guys playing a role-playing game. So it all kind of centers around this guy, Scott. And this is why I kept watching. It's like, oh, that guy has a great name. Sounds like a real smart guy. And he kind of is a pretty smart guy, but he's very atypical of many of the gamer types in the D&D role-playing game culture. He wears like, Slayer shirts and, Grim Reaper on a horse in the moonlight shirt. And he's listening to the metal all day, obscure metal all day long. Painting his figurines and coming up with ideas for the game and stuff like that. He spends a lot of time preparing for the game. He's the game master of his crew. And the first hiccup, I guess, the beginning of the conflict in the movie is one of the players that he normally has quits gaming because he's about to get divorced. His wife's going to divorce him, So he's like, I got to quit the gaming. I got to get my life together. I want to do everything I can to keep my wife. Respect. But Scott is pissed off. He's like, you can't. We've been doing this for 4 years and so forth. You can't leave. He's like, I got to, there are more important things than gaming. So he leaves, and so he's looking for a fourth player, and I never really understood this thing. It was like, there has to be a certain number of players. It's like, no. And the whole idea, I guess, is because he has scaled his adventure to that many players. And so as a game master, that means he has to do a lot of rework to, rework everything, I guess. But in many ways, you start realizing that this guy is not a very nice person. He's not attractive. This movie's incredibly well cast. He's not an attractive guy. He's large without being, like, physically fit, And he's incredibly into the D&D thing and painting figures and having little fights with his figures, And you kind of get a glimpse into his home life. I don't know if those plot points were necessary, where he's living with his grandma and his mom's just a terrible person. And the whole idea is kind of to set up his psychology about why he's such a tyrant as a game master in many ways. And so, and he's like the least social of his nerdy group of friends, and they're already not very social at all. So they lost this other player, and he goes to this hobby shop that he used to work at, but he got fired from, and I'm not going to explain why. The truth comes out, and it's incredibly embarrassing. So he got fired from there, and he's going to look for another player, where he runs across this other guy here. That guy, Miles. And he talks to him, hey, why don't you come and join our game? We're down a guy, and I could use him. He's like, oh, okay, fine. And so he comes over, this Miles guy, he comes over, and he brings beer with him. He goes, you guys help yourself. And Scott says, well, we generally don't have alcohol. I don't drink beer because I'm allergic to alcohol, so if I have one beer, it's like 10. And like, oh, okay. And so the other guys are like, is it okay if I have a beer? Beer? And he's just kind of giving them the hairy eyeball. It's like, really? You're going to drink a beer? Really? And you start to realize that Scott is like a little bit of a tyrant. And Miles makes a character, and he plays with him for a session. And he like settles this argument that they've been having for years about which is faster, the Millennium Falcon or the USS Enterprise. And so he comes in and like the first day, like settles it. And Scott's upset, because like I'm the smart one. I'm the one who always has the answers. I'm the game master and so forth. And so he feels challenged by someone like Miles coming in. All right. Additionally, his other friends, these guys over here, are working on a film project, an indie film project of their own. And every week they come up, they show, oh, we did another scene. Check it out. And they're showing it to their friends, and stuff like that. And he's like, he never put it on their blog, but they showed it to Miles, and Miles says, oh, I run a certain website, and he names his website, and they're like, oh, geekchic.com or something like that. Pretty good website. And they're like, you run geekchic.com? It's like, yeah, I'd love to take your video and put it up on my website. And he does. They give the video to Miles. Miles puts it on his high traffic website, and they get like 400,000 views because he helped him out. And so everyone starts liking this Miles guy more because Scott's kind of a tyrant. I don't know how many times I can say tyrant, but I've run across game masters like this, It's a common story, Additionally, Miles is a far more well-adjusted person. He has an attractive girlfriend and stuff like that. You find out later that he has parties with his cool friends, and he compartmentalizes his game friends, and they take offense to it and stuff like that. They end up kind of making Miles into a jerk, and it's because clearly Scott is the protagonist, but he's actually an antagonist, if you ask me. That's all he does is antagonize throughout the entire movie. And so, when it comes to a tyrant like that, they have a conversation once where he's like, "Oh, I'm the keeper of the stones, and I'll give you the stones if you go to the wizard up the trail, and you break into the wizard's study, and inside is a long phoenix feather." And Miles says, "Nah, screw that. I'm just going to throw the sword right at his head and steal the light stones that we need and get out of here. Let's skip this step, right?" And he's like, "No, you can't do that." It's like, "Yes, I can. Can't we do anything we want in this game?" He's like, "Yeah, but I planned out this thing." It's like, "Well, can I do it or not?" And he's like, "Yes, but it's very difficult, and it's going to take a 20. Guy rolls a 20. Scott gets pissed off and wants to storm out. And he wants to bring his closest friend with him, this guy. And he's like, no. He wants to bring the other players with him. And they're like, no. We want to have fun. And Scott and Miles have this conversation. It's like, it's supposed to be a story. It's supposed to be a story I'm creating. And Miles is like, so no one else gets to make any decisions in the story that we're creating together? And he's like, well, yeah, but it was supposed to be a good story. And Miles is like, no. It's supposed to be fun. This is a game. It's supposed to be fun. And Scott storms off, and he's like, if you guys want a game with me again, you'll don't even think about coming back. And I was like, and it just shows like he's a child in many ways. And so, and there's some weird, sexual problems, I guess, with this guy, because there's this thing where his friend had a zit on his face, and he's like, "There's a zit on your face. I got to pop it." And he like pins him on the bed and pops a zit on his face. And then he's like rolls off and goes, oh. And then he pulls toilet paper out. It's like, dude, this is way too sexual. And then he's like, "You want to sleep over tonight?" And it's like, dude, what the hell? All right. Additionally, there's a scene where he meets Miles' girlfriend, who is a very attractive woman. And as you imagine, guys like this aren't very good at dealing with very attractive women. And it kind of like sets him off his game, and he's like immediately on the defensive. And he gets into another argument with Miles, and it's not good. This guy's just in a downward spiral. He doesn't understand. And there's a scene where this guy who's supposed to be like Gary Gygax, the guy who invented Dungeons and Dragons, was coming to speak at that hobby shop that he used to work at. And so he comes there and tries to challenge Gary Gygax, trying to get that guy on his side in this argument, trying to explain like the story is more important than the game. And the guy who plays Gary Gygax, clone or whatever, he ends up like yelling at Scott. It's like, no, if your players are not having a good time, you have failed as a dungeon master, game master. It's so Scott just can't take it. He's like, I worked so hard. I put so many hours into it. Yeah, that's nobody else's fault. All right? Because, you don't really have a job. You're an adult male. You're not paying any bills. You're living with your grandma. You need to man up. Miles has a job, a successful job. He can interact interpersonally with people and not piss them off all the time. And there's even a line where Miles says, "It's not my fault that you're so unlikable." And he has a point. I don't like that they made Miles out to be a jerk, because what happens is Scott crashes a party at Miles' house, and he says, he's my nemesis, I'm going to kick his ass, and shit like that. And he creates a confrontation with Miles at his house. So, but he's drinking alcohol too, so Miles is concerned about his alcohol allergy. So he calls his other friend, and he says, "Hey, I'm having a party over here, and Scott's over here, and he's crashed it and drinking here. And we've already argued several times, and I've told him to get out of my apartment and stuff like that." And so these guys are like, you're having a party? You didn't invite us? It's like, yeah, what's wrong with compartmentalizing your nerdy friends and your more social friends? I don't see anything wrong with that. But these guys took offense to it. And so they come there to get Scott from the party, but Scott ends up getting into a fight with Miles, getting his ass kicked. And Miles goes, you nerds should get out of my house. And that's why he's the bad guy. Get out of my house, you nerds. Because you play D&D too, man. You're a nerd too. And it's funny. I think that like every game master, every dungeon master should watch this movie and understand like the dangers of getting too involved in your own creation, And there's even a scene where Scott is telling us like it's basically goes back to the cavemen days, like sitting around the campfire and your communal storytelling. I tell the story of this great hero, and then somebody else tells the story of another great hero, and then another guy comes up with a story for a villain, and then you make them interact. You know, I was even thinking about like Peter and the Wolf, you know, where each instrument was a different character, you know. You know, even the bassoon. This may be a little nerdy. I wonder if people are still watching. Anyway. Zero charisma. It has a limited market because not everyone plays role-playing games. I get that. So I give it 8 of 13 stars in terms of, I think that even people who have a very basic understanding about role-playing games and what they are, they can understand that there could be this kind of interpersonal conflict within a group of nerds playing role-playing games. And sometimes you got to deal with a bully. You know, there's even bullies among the nerds. Pretty good movie, though, 8 of 13 stars. I'd recommend it, especially if you're nerdy. like me. All right, let's get into the news worth knowing. If you say no in chat without context, I don't know what you're saying no to, because that could have been 20 minutes ago. I have no context. All right, let's talk about the Socialists in D.C. now. AOC welcomes Socialist Mamdani to nation's capital as Democrat leaders withhold endorsements. They're starting to back off this guy, which I think is good, and only the craziest people are buddying up with him or rubbing elbows with him. A political earthquake that shook the Democratic Party when Zoran Mamdani won the New York City's primary last month has rattled its way down to Washington, D.C. as Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York teamed up with Mamdani at a communication and organizing Skillshare breakfast on Wednesday morning. What a terrible title for that. They can't even come up with good names for the... Ocasio-Cortez, the progressive champion and youngest woman elected to Congress, was an early endorser of Mamdani, 33-year-old so-called Democratic Socialist. Why would you put it like that? He is a Democratic Socialist who has yet to land key endorsements from New York Democratic leaders. The Bronx and Queens representatives campaigned with Mamdani in New York City ahead of his primary win last month. And on Wednesday, the squad members welcoming Mamdani to the nation's capital. Ocasio-Cortez and Mamdani were scheduled to host the 8 a.m. breakfast at the National Democratic Club, while the Democratic National Committee is located right next door where Wednesday's breakfast is being held. So it's just a different day. What are they having? The DNC said it was not involved with this event. Minutes before the breakfast was scheduled to start, the location was moved to a restaurant a few blocks away. Ocasio-Cortez confirmed the breakfast meeting on Tuesday, blah, 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 blah. All right. So, yeah, they're trying to peddle this around like this is the new normal in terms of what the Democratic Party represents. And I hope it isn't. You know, this is, I've always known that Democrats at their core were socialists because these are the, these are the causes that they support are socialist causes. Now they're just outright saying it. Yeah, we're socialists. We're democratic socialists. So that's kind of like America. And, you know, I don't know how stupid you are, but if you think that anyone who is socialist or sympathetic to jihadis is good for America, if you think that at all, you should go ahead and get the hell out of my country and go somewhere else. Because, you know, socialism destroys nations and ends up in deaths. Same with communism. Like socialism is just lazy communism, which is already pretty lazy, you know? So, and it just doesn't work. And you can say, well, China works. It's like, yeah, at what cost to the Chinese people does communism work in China? You know, people starving every day, mass graves. It's at what cost does communism work? All right. And there was a time, like in J. Edgar Hoover's time, I know I keep mentioning this, but in J. Edgar Hoover's time, he worked tirelessly to keep communism out of America, you know? Then he died, and all of a sudden, the universities start getting infiltrated with a bunch of crazy people, and you get the Weather Underground, you get all sorts of crazy leftist terrorists, you know, terrorism, and socialist and communist teachings at centers of higher learning. After J. Edgar Hoover died, that's when all that really began. And communism has been trying to infiltrate into the United States for hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. It's an incredibly dangerous ideology, and anyone that follows it should be kicked out of government. Anyway. Let's go on to this next story. Let's get angry about something else. It's sort of scary. Officials flag surprising revelations from the deep State Department cuts. When senior State Department officials set out to trim the agency in the biggest reorganization since the Cold War, they couldn't get a total head count on employees for months, they say. My God. Sounds very well run. It took us 3 months to get a list of the people who actually work in the building. Oh my God. One senior State Department official told reporters during a briefing at Foggy Bottom on Monday, defending the job cuts that detractors have claimed will damage U.S. diplomacy. No, it won't. They couldn't tell you how many people work there, the official said. It's sort of scary as a taxpayer and as a public servant to think that we don't even know how many employees we have. This is a national security agency, you know. Who are these people? The reorganization will result in a department with about 3,000 fewer employees. Around half of those took a voluntary buyout, and the other half were given reduction in force notices. Handful of Secretary of State Marco Rubio's closest advisors evaluated over 700 domestic offices within the State Department, 700 offices, submitting reduction in force notices to employees in those they found to be duplicative or inefficient. Ugh. The idea, officials said, was to put a minimum of 12 clearances on any piece of paper, meaning documents would have to go through 12 layers of approval instead of 40 or 50 clearances. Oh my God. You're bringing it down to 12? Oh my God. Department has dozens of other offices handling human resources. Dozens of offices just with human resources. And they still don't know how many people are there. When a new employee were hired, they were accepting faxed records of their past work with other agencies. It's crazy that a department that's tasked with so many critical diplomatic, national, and security functions with a $50 billion plus budget is running its affairs this way. An official said. Wow. Some of these regional offices within this sort of functional civil liberties, civil society, bureaus of democracy, human rights and labor, population, refugees, and migration, each had their own regional offices in addition to the country desk, regional bureau construct. Every independent bureau and office had its own executive director, its own HR department, its own payments. We're making payments out of like 60 plus different offices. $50 billion. Just flush. With people just trying to justify their jobs. You know? You're just creating useless jobs. People are crying about, whoa, these poor government workers got to get new jobs. Yeah, because their previous job meant nothing. It meant nothing. It was much ado about nothing. You got to put that on your resume. It's like, I did work there. How can you prove? You know, like, well, my position was duplicative and inefficient, but hire me anyway? That's what I mean. It's like, it's very much like federal welfare, you know, but you're getting paid like these, like people are getting like 70, 80K, you know, starting salaries. I know because I was offered a job at the State Department. I said, no, thank you. Who's coming in? Hillary Clinton? No, thank you. All right, let's go to the next story. Portland City Council considers how to boot ICE out of the city facility. Portland's progressive-leaning city council is exploring ways to expel immigration and customs enforcement from a detention facility that has become a flashpoint for violent clashes between agents and radical agitators. Last week, city councilors were told a packed hearing that they would consider revoking ICE's permit to operate its South Waterfront facility along South Moody Avenue due to alleged violations of a 2011 conditional use permit, according to a local news outlet, Willamette Week. So they found some technicality, I guess. The permit allows detention and administrative use under specific limitations, but lawmakers have raised concerns that ICE has been holding detainees there for longer than the required 12-hour limit. 12 hours. Residents and lawmakers raised moral concerns, saying that the facility undermines the city's sanctuary city policy, while residents testified about targeted arrests, gas attacks, and intimidation. Quote, our values of sanctuary and humanity are under siege, local resident Michelle Dar said. She also said that federal agents' armed actions threatens everyone's safety, not just that of immigrants. Other residents complained that loud bangs and flashbangs were disrupting life for residents of subsidized housing and students of a local school. A handful of people also blamed Antifa for the ugly scenes outside the facility. Really? Maybe Antifa was causing the trouble? Maybe if they arrested the radical agitators, and the illegal immigrants, maybe your city would be nicer. Maybe Portland would be a little bit safer. Instead of why are you backing these criminals? Why are you backing them? Additionally, you're on the city council. Shouldn't the FBI be coming and arresting you for obstruction? This is what irritates me about like Pam Bondi. It's like, why are there not more people cuffed? Why are these people not getting cuffed right now for obstruction? Blood pressure's going up. I'm going to switch topics. This is not going to be good, though. Let's talk about Israel. And, just talking about the, geopolitical complexities of the region is not exactly the same thing as going to an anti-Semitic place. Just put that out there. So Israel strikes Syria's military headquarters as the regime clashes with Druze civilians. Israel announced on Wednesday that its forces struck near the entrance of the Syrian Defense Ministry's headquarters in Damascus. Quote, the IDF continues to monitor developments of the regime's actions against Druze civilians in southern Syria. In accordance with directives from the political echelon, the IDF is striking in the area and it remains prepared for various scenarios, the Israeli Defense Forces wrote on X. An Israeli military official said on Wednesday that while the Syrian regime has claimed that it's acting to restore order, what is happening on the ground tells a very different story. The official added that the more the regime intervenes, the worse it gets. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also put out a statement saying that his country's forces were, quote, acting to save our Druze brothers and eliminate the regime's gangs. And warning Druze in Israel not to go into Syria. I have one request for you. If you are citizens of Israel, do not cross the border, Netanyahu said on Wednesday. You are endangering your lives. You could be killed. You could be kidnapped. You are harming the IDF's efforts. Therefore, I ask you to return to your homes and let IDF do its work. The southern Syrian city of Swida, fun phrase to say, has become a flashpoint in recent days as the country's leaders clash with armed Druze groups. Syria's defense ministry claimed its forces acted after militias of Swida violated the ceasefire agreement reached on Tuesday. Jeez. All right, I don't want to read any more of this article. It's the issue with Islam is that it's intolerant of every other religion. Intolerant of every other religion. I know some Druze people, and I like what they said. It's like, what does it mean to be Druze? I said, and he's like, we're Muslim during the Christian holidays and Christian during the Muslim holidays. I'm like, okay. It's funny enough answer to not pry any deeper. People's religion is pretty private. I get it. Or maybe not. Some people are a little more open about it. And so I know some Druze people, and they're just like any other religion. Islam thinks that they should cut their heads off and take their stuff because they don't believe in the prophet and so forth, or they don't believe in the prophet enough, And so you could sit here and say like Israel's a kind of a war hawk country. It's frequently doing things in the military. But you understand, like, everyone on earth hates them. I don't really get it. There's a lot of people on my side of the aisle who are like, the Jews are really the problem. It's like, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's lazy to blame an entire group. I mean, it's simple racism, really. It's lazy to blame an entire group for all the ills of the world. It's like, oh, it rained today. It's the freaking Jews. And it's like, you kidding me? You know, they control the weather. It's like, get out of here. You know, it's lazy to blame, you know, a group like that on, you know. Plus, have you heard of Islam? There are more dangerous ideologies out there than Judaism. Huh? If the Jews controlled the weather, Southern Florida would never have hurricanes. That's logical. Yeah, Ben Shapiro would never have moved there. He says, I'll risk the hurricanes. It's better than living in California. And I get it. I really do. Anyway. And, you know, plus, most of the Jews I've met in my life are freaking cool. All right? They want to play role-playing games with us, just not on Fridays.
We don't play on Friday.
We don't play on Friday. You can come on Monday. Just, how about sundown on Saturday? I guess we could do that. Anyway, let's go to the next story. Man takes tip back. Okay, these are the happier stories, and then we're out of here. No, right? Okay. Takes tip back after being publicly scolded and humiliated by a waitress. A waitress at an Italian restaurant apparently humiliated a customer in front of a full dining room, prompting him to take his tip back, according to an online forum. The 32-year-old man shared a story on Reddit asking if he was wrong about retrieving the cash after a dinner date went sideways. See, here's the thing. I don't know if you're a man, if you need to go to the internet for validation doing what you did. I don't see why you do that. You should know that what you did was fine. And you don't need to ask the internet, am I the asshole? That's why I wonder, like, what kind of men go to the am I the asshole forums and need to ask questions. Because you're not very, I don't know, confident in your sense of moral code, I guess. All right, so he went on to say, this occurred a few nights ago, and I just couldn't believe it happened the way it did, he wrote in the post. He and his 29-year-old girlfriend had dined at the restaurant before. It wasn't fancy, but it was good for a relaxed evening over a glass of wine. But on this particular night, the service was poor, he said. The waitress allegedly lost his drink twice, brought him and his girlfriend the wrong appetizer, and vanished for what seemed like an eternity when they wanted to order dessert. Yep, I've had waitresses like that. He paid and left a 10% cash tip, which he felt was reasonable given the circumstances. We were just standing up to leave when the waitress came over, took the cash, and said, seriously, this is it? He continued. She had said it audibly. A few people at some nearby tables turned around and stared. He said he was dumbfounded. Then she added, you know, servers can't pay their rent because of people like you. If you can't tip properly, don't dine out, the server said. The man said that others in the restaurant fell silent as his girlfriend recoiled in embarrassment, and he remained calm and told the waitress, sorry you feel that way. But then she muttered, whatever, cheapskates. That was the last straw for the baffled boyfriend. Good sentence. He went back to the table, pocketed his cash tip, and left without another word. I thought she had it. Anyway. I feel like being scolded and humiliated on account of a 10% tip that I actually did leave is way out of bounds. His girlfriend told him later that his reaction was fine, but a friend said he went too far. Ugh. So he took to Reddit, asking others if he was wrong for retrieving a tip, and after she yelled at us in front of everyone in the restaurant. Many people side with him. We don't care about their opinions. And you shouldn't care about their opinions. Do you care about their opinions?
I don't care about their opinions.
Yeah. Do you think he did the right thing?
I want to know how much the bill was.
How much was the bill? Right. How much is 10% are we talking? Was it a bottle of red? Bottle of white? It all depends upon your appetite. That could have been a big check.
I need more detail.
Yeah. That song, Brenda and Eddie, I wonder how much their check was that night. How many bottles of red? How many bottles of white? And I always like the idea of, like, I have like a stack of ones, you know, on the table. And when the waitress comes by, she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," you know. It's like, "Oh, this is cooked medium rare. I wanted medium." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And it's like, "That's fine. You can just throw it back on the grill, and I'll just take a couple of these dollars and put them in my bucket." And that'll be your tip now. And every time they screw up, you just take a little bit away. That gives them the incentive. What bothers me most about this is the whole tipping argument. A lot of people think that, tipping, we shouldn't have tipping. It's like, why is the customer directly responsible for the income of your employees, McDonald's or Chili's? Why are we responsible for paying them a fair wage? Because if we're the ones paying them, they're the ones that are going to yell at us when their check is a little light. You know what I mean? So I think maybe we should get rid of tipping, maybe. But in many ways, it's supposed to be an incentive for a higher level of service. But at this point, it's automatic. You go. It's so automatic that you go. I went to Subway the other day, and it's like custom tip 10%, 15%, 20%, 25%. It's like, no, I'm going to go down and hit this little tiny button that says no tip, because everywhere is asking for tips now. And especially if you're like an Uber Eats kind of guy, if you're a DoorDash kind of guy, not only are you paying ridiculous prices to get the food, I mean, the tips are forced communism. What? Is that comment or something? Forced communism. Forced communism. Interesting. For the tipping. Exactly. So, I don't know. Get rid of tipping, I guess. Let's go to this last story and get out of here. Holy cow. So, no thank you. No a million times. No. Who does this? This is insane. Parents crashing honeymoons has become a bizarre new travel trend for modern newlyweds. Psychologist warns of boundary issues when in-laws join couples on post-wedding getaways. Can you imagine your parents like busting down the door with a camera? What are you guys doing in here, huh? What are you doing in here? And that next thing you know, that's on Facebook. You two cowering under the covers. Mom, get out! Jeez. Because here's the thing. It's like, your mom's going to want to talk about that stuff. You making me any grandchildren? I just busted in to make sure you're making me some grandchildren. Anyway, so let's go to the article. While a honeymoon is a special trip for newly married couples to enjoy after the chaos of a wedding, a recent trend has people asking if more is merrier. Some honeymooners are now bringing their parents along on their romantic trip, with chatter on social media indicating that some in-laws are even inviting themselves. That's a bridge too far. All right, one Reddit user posted in the R White Lotus HBO forum. Why? Why mom is coming on the honeymoon? I had a neighbor whose mother-in-law and father-in-law went on their honeymoon with them. They felt they could because they gifted the couple the honeymoons to Hawaii. Ooh, such a strange, odd family. Not my honeymoon, said one Redditor. Another one wrote, as long as parents, in-laws are invited and the newlyweds have a separate bedroom, I don't really see the problem. All right, there's just a bunch of people, they're giving their opinions on that. No. The whole point of a marriage is for you to separate from your parents. That you are now the family. When you get married, now you're the family, and you got to stand on your own as a family. And I understand, of course your parents are going to help you out here and there. Of course. Maybe they even gave you the trip to Hawaii. All right? They're paying for it, so we're coming too. That'd be hard to argue with. What? Yeah, just stay away from us, because we're going to be banging. Making you grandchildren. At least that would be my honeymoon, I'd hope. She's like, let's go do no. Let's go see about the wave pool. No. Let's go, there's a lazy river. No. You got a little water slide. Nope. A club? Nope. You want to eat? Yeah, let's go get something to eat. I'm dehydrated too. Yeah. So, no, don't do this. Don't. That's weird. It's weird. It kind of reminds me of hearing about people going to job interviews and bringing their mom along or their dad along at a job interview. Do you really think you're going to get the job? I mean, I'll hire your dad. He seems like a trustworthy guy, but if you need your dad here for a job interview, why would you think you're going to get hired? It's even to the point where service dogs, this is my service, this is my emotional support ferret. And I got to bring it everywhere with me, even to restaurants and stuff like that. It's like, grow up, be an adult, live on your own, stand on your own. I don't know about you, but I mean, if I get married and I feel like I can't stand on my own without like my parents, I'd feel like a sham of a man. I'd feel like I failed my wife anyway. But thanks for marrying me all the same. Hey, even losers get married. That's not true. I don't think I'm ever going to get married. Anyway, this is going to be the end of the show. This has been, I would remind you again, I have a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio. Become a patron today. I'd appreciate it very much. I have sticker packs too. You become a patron or send me money through Cash App. You send me an address, I'll send you a sticker pack. You can also send me money on Cash App, like I said, at #shockmonkeyradio, all one word. Follow me on social media at DNALETSEW on Twitter. That's the word wasteland spelled backwards on Twitter. And at SLRobbins13 on the Instagram. Or you could just probably search Shock Monkey Radio and find me. Find me on the Googles. It's worth the Google. Anyway, this has been Shock Monkey Radio. I'm the Madman, and I love you. I love you.